a march of, I think, 400,000 people marching in New York City on September 21st, marching for a variety of things, but most broadly for climate justice and trying to tell the UN that now is time to take action and prevent climate change.
People's Climate March was the largest climate march in the history of the world, and it was very remarkable coming together of all sorts of people for one goal.
I would describe the People's Climate March as a large gathering of people from around the country and around the world to come together to bring awareness to issues about the climate that are currently happening and the need for action.
So I think the People's Climate March is kind of like an amalgamation of different diverse groups and organizations that are all pushing for sometimes specific like policies or goals under the umbrella of like making awareness of climate change.
Is designed to raise awareness about climate change and other environmental issues that are affecting us today, in order to sort of spur people into action or just show solidarity with the movement, and put pressure on leaders to enact change.
The goal of the Climate March, as I kind of heard it as a participant, was to really get a lot of different factions in the environmental movement kind of in the same place for the first time, because I think kind of the people who brought it together had been frustrated that kind of the environmental justice people really weren't working with like the energy people and the economic divestment work, and that it was all kind of fragmented. So I think that was like a really exciting part of the Climate March, and then also just kind of to like wake people up, get in the news. I think there's like a lot of anxiety that climate is kind of such an intractable problem that it's hard to mobilize around. So I think trying to just kind of like raise awareness and be kind of a topic of discussion in the way that any good march is.
The mission of the Climate March was to sort of it was a call for action. There were a bunch of like world leaders in New York, and it was the people sort of like saying, we want changes, like policy changes and everything, in order to help the climate crisis.
So I feel like the Climate March is so large that I can't really identify like one goal, because I feel like there were so many people there and so many people marching for like a lot of different reasons, all under the umbrella of like climate justice and like paying attention to climate change. And I think since it took place like in the middle of New York City, which is like a large city, an extremely large city, like it's supposed to draw attention. And also I'm pretty sure there was a UN conference that weekend about like climate change.
I think the mission was to galvanize both the world and the leaders and show that this is something that people really care about and people are willing to mobilize for and willing to march for, and that this is not something that just a few radical people care about, but this is really something that like the population as a whole cares about and needs to be addressed.
I think the mission is to get the UN to like be aware of all these environmental problems.
I think the mission of the Climate March was to bring awareness to climate-related issues and, gather more support so this way real change can be made.
It coincided with the UN meeting, so I definitely think it was trying to get that on their on the UN's agenda, or at least on the UN's like mind. And I know that Ban Ki-moon marched with them, so that's definitely important.
Climate March is to sort of put pressure on American leaders and leaders around the world to do something about climate change, because there has been sort of limited action on this issue, and to show the public that this is an issue that is pressing, that is important, and that is critical that we address. And other purposes would probably be to show for the first time in a very public way how many people care about this issue, and how central it is to everyone on Earth.
Setting the goal of getting a lot of people in the same place was really powerful. There were 400,000 people there. It definitely, like, just being on the ground, it felt really exciting. I think part of the problem with climate is it is such an intractable problem, and it's like kind of like the work is kind of everywhere. And so I think there were some exciting things that came out of it. The Rockefeller Brothers Fund divested from coal. I think there was kind of a lot of media attention. I think kind of the work has yet to be done. But it was exciting to get a conversation started.
In terms of the march, I think it was successful in garnering a lot of attention to the issue, especially because it coincided with the UN meeting on climate change. So in that sense, I think in terms of numbers, it was successful in getting a lot of people out to support the issue. But in terms of actually passing laws and enacting change, I think that's going to be a much longer and harder process. And right now, a lot of leaders around the world are not willing to commit to hard and fast rules and caps on carbon emissions. So I think that's going to be a challenge for our generation. That's going to be that won't be achieved at any point in the near future, but is something that we can all work on more.
Pretty disappointing because A, not that much came of it, and B, it was more of like a feel-good kind of march as opposed to like really disruptive, like radical energy, which I think is more what's necessary.